So hi, welcome to this episode of History Hunters. I'm back down here in Glendale, Forest Lawn Memorial Park. I think I've done about 3 videos here. I was afraid they weren't going to open this park because yesterday it was closed because of the fires. The Eaton fire has put a lot of ash on the graves, I've noticed. And there's thousands of celebrity graves that I could possibly highlight here, but I don't possibly have the wherewithal to do that. But I'm going to do some that I found interesting, and some of the statuary here in this park is just amazing. I'm going to highlight some of that for you. I'm going to put some links to the videos I've already done, but I'm going to show you some new people, and it's going to be a very interesting episode of History Hunters, so join me. When I was a kid, I did not appreciate sculptures. I kind of thought they were creepy and weren't interesting at all. But think about the art that was required to make these intricate and smooth details, like the human form out of stone. Unbelievable talent. I'm just really impressed. This one is over the Messenkop grave, and it's Art Guide number 190, Melody of Love by Finelli. And obviously ballerinas, but just the intricate details. Very impressed. If only I could do such art, but man, how many years would that take? This elaborate grave at the top of the hill belongs to Edward Ned Doheny Jr. He was a businessman and son of oil tycoon Edward L. Doheny. He has been called the Bagman of Teapot Dome for his role in the 1920s political scandal, but is chiefly remembered today for his mysterious demise. After serving as a lieutenant in the U.S. Navy during World War I, he joined the Doheny oil business as company vice president. In December 1921, Doheny was instructed by his father to withdraw $100,000 from his own brokerage account and deliver it to U.S. Secretary of Interior Albert Fall in Washington, D.C. He did so accompanied by his friend and personal secretary, T. Hugh Plunkett. This transaction became key in the Teapot Dome scandal of 1923 and 1924, in which the senior Doheny and rival oil magnate Harry F. Sinclair were accused of bribing Fall to gain leases on government-owned oil reserves. During the years of litigation that followed, Doheny kept a low profile but devoted his free time to supervising the construction of Greystone, his $3 million mansion in Beverly Hills. The work was completed in October 1928, but he didn't enjoy it for long. On the night of February 16, 1929, Doheny and Hugh Plunkett were found shot to death in one of Greystone's guest bedrooms. Police detectives quickly concluded that Plunkett had murdered Doheny after being refused a raise and then turned the gun on himself. But due to the haste of the investigation, the rather pat motive attributed to Plunkett, and the way the incident was hushed up in the press, many people started questioning the police pronouncements, and many questions were left unanswered. Although the Dohenys were Catholic, Ned was interred not in the Doheny family room at the Calvary Mausoleum, but alone at Forest Lawn in Glendale. That fact led many to think that Doheny was the gunman, since suicides were denied Catholic burial at the time. I couldn't find any markers, and I doubt that few people know who's buried here, but there was no expense spared. The marble canopy over his sarcophagus came all the way from Rome. The Beverly Hills Police Department maintains how Plunkett killed Doheny, and then himself, with the Colt Bisley revolver that Plunkett kept in his quarters above the garages. Buried a short distance down the hill is the grave of Doheny's alleged murderer, Theodore Hugh Plunkett. He came to Los Angeles with his family in 1912 and worked as a mechanic at a service station owned by W.P. Smith, a Santa Fe Railroad executive. When Smith's daughter Lucy married Ned Doheny in 1913, Plunkett was hired as the couple's chauffeur. After serving in the Navy during World War I, Plunkett became the close friend and personal secretary of Ned Doheny. After the Teapot Dome scandal, Plunkett reportedly suffered bouts of mental instability, which led to his divorce from his wife in 1928. Some have theorized that Plunkett killed Doheny for just suggesting that he check into a mental facility. Others suggest that Doheny killed his friend to silence him and, realizing what he had done, turned the gun on himself. Some theorize that the men were gay lovers and that the murderer was Ned's wife Lucy, who found out. None of these theories have been proven, however. So this is the grave of Samuel Browne Sr., not a celebrity really, 1869 to 1951. He was a police officer down here, and he single-handedly saved the Central Division Los Angeles Police Station from being blown up by a terrorist. He also ran for sheriff of LA County in 1926, but he lost with less than 1,000 votes. He was the first cousin of J. Edgar Hoover, who was the FBI director, and it's believed that he invented the police uniform gun belt that all police officers wear to this day, known as the Sam Browne belt. Most areas of the Great Mausoleum are off limits to the public, but contain a who's who of Hollywood entertainers, all at rest behind closed corridors. Entombed here are the remains of celebrities like Michael Jackson, Theda Bara, Debbie C. Fields, Jean Harlow, James Arness, Harold Lloyd, William Boyd, who was Hopalong Cassidy, Ellen Corby, who was on the Waltons, and Charlie Grapewind, who played Uncle Henry on Wizard of Oz, and many more. On this visit, I am determined to finally see the crypts of Clark Gable, his wife Carole Lombard, and any others I can get away with seeing. And here is the grave of Wallace Beery, very famous actor, lived from 1885 to 1949. No man is indispensable, but some are irreplaceable.
Oh, we won't think about that, Jim. You just dies, and that's that. Quite often, though, not as quick as people think, Jim. Now there I'll be, way out on that yard arm, way out there with a rope around my neck.
And it looks like somebody left a rose here a while ago because it's pretty dried out. But it's interesting because Wallace Beery, had a cabin over in the Mammoth Lakes area, and he lived there and vacationed there. And here he lies in Glendale, California at Forest Lawn Memorial Park, totally within distance of the Great Mausoleum. And right next to Wally Beery is his wife, Mary Alida Beery, 1898 to 1986. She certainly lived a lot longer than her husband. There was only one wife, mother, sister, and friend. I don't know if you've ever visited a celebrity's grave, but when you're there, you kind of wonder how many of the celebrity's friends who were celebrities actually visited, and especially in the case of offspring. For example, like if you go to John Wayne's grave, how many times has Patrick Wayne gone to visit his dad's grave? It's a quirky thought of mine. Well, it looks like somebody's remembered Police Officer Ian Campbell with a rock here. As you can see, he was killed in 1963. He was one of the officers in the Onion Field killing up in Bakersfield area. It was on March 9, 1963, when Los Angeles police officers Ian Campbell and Carl Henninger pulled over a 1946 Ford Coupe at the corner of Carlos Avenue and Gower Street in Hollywood. Inside the car were two armed thugs named Gregory Powell and Jimmy Lee Smith. They were able to overcome and kidnap both officers and drive them to a field south of Bakersfield, where Powell shot and killed Officer Campbell. Henninger then ran off to safety, but was emotionally scarred for the rest of his life. So it looks like Officer Campbell is buried between his dad, who was a medical doctor, William Campbell, and his mother, Chrissy Campbell, who lived in 1993. Wow, just think about losing your husband at an early age. Imagine losing your son at the age of 32 years old. Not far from Campbell is the grave of Charles Morris Case. He was a second lieutenant with the 330th Base Unit from Greenville Army Airfield in South Carolina. He was one of 6 airmen killed in a crash of a B-25J just 7 miles from Clayton, Georgia. So right along Cathedral Drive at the top of Forest Lawn Memorial Park, you will find the grave of Carole Landis. She was a popular film star of the 1930s and 40s, and she was dubbed the Sweater Girl early in her career, probably because she looked nice in a sweater.
Well, I have some brains, too. It was me they were interested in. Some people think I'm a very attractive girl.
Soon, however, she became stuck in leads in B movies and supporting roles in A movies, and while she never became the great success, she did star in such films as Four Jills in a Jeep, based on a popular book of the same name that wrote about her first USO tour. She toured with the USO twice during the war and almost died in 1945 from amoebic dysentery and malaria contracted in the Pacific. And after she was jilted by her lover Rex Harrison, the actor, her whole life fell apart, and she took her life in 1948 at the height of her fame and her popularity. And there's a very touching verbiage on her grave. To our beloved Carole, whose love, graciousness, and kindness touched us all, who will always be with us in the beauties of this earth until we meet again. Very sad. She was very young, very pretty. Threw her life away, probably because of man, but also probably because of mental illness. I had visited this terrace before, where Ted Knight and Ethel Waters are at rest, but today I wanted to search for Robert Alda, the actor who was the father of actor Alan Alda. Robert Alda was mostly a Broadway theater actor who moved to Italy during the 1960s and appeared in many European films. He occasionally returned to the United States for film appearances that included The Girl Who Knew Too Much in 1969. So like I said earlier, some of these celebrities have celebrity sons, and Alan Alda was the star of MASH, who played Hawkeye. I would just wonder how many times he has been here to visit his father's grave and his mother's grave. Flora, we can't forget her as well, although I don't think she was an actress. A person could spend quite a while studying this sculpture, The Mystery of Life, completed in 1928 by Italian sculptor Ernesto Gazzeri. It is the largest sculpture group in the cemetery. 18 life-size figures, including infants, youth, and adults, are gathered about a stream that flows from an unseen source toward an unknown destination. The meaning of each figure has countless interpretations. Gazzeri died in 1965 and is not buried here. Since the Garden of Honor was unlocked, I had a chance to wander in and find who I could find. Generally, it's not readily accessible to the public. Mervyn LeRoy, who lived from 1900 to 1987, was a movie director and producer who was best known for producing The Wizard of Oz in 1939. He grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area, and as a young boy, his house collapsed as he was in bed during the 1906 San Francisco earthquake. When he was 12, LeRoy hawked newspapers on the streets of San Francisco. He also got to watch actor Charlie Chaplin at work on sets throughout the San Francisco area, and he eventually made money impersonating Chaplin. He later got into film production. I happened to wander through this alcove of cremain niches in search of a familiar name, and one popped out. Robert Taylor was a movie and TV actor and singer who was one of the most popular leading men of the cinema. His film career began in 1934 when he signed with MGM, and his first leading role came with Magnificent Obsession. His popularity grew in the late 1940s and early 1950s with films including Camille, A Yank at Oxford, Waterloo Bridge, and Baton. During World War II, Taylor served in the U.S. Naval Air Forces, working as a flight instructor and appearing in instructional films. From 1959 to 1962, he starred in the TV series The Detective starring Robert Taylor. In 1966, Taylor took over as the host of Death Valley Days from Ronald Reagan. Taylor and his wife, Ursula Thies Taylor, were selected by Ronald and Nancy Reagan to be the godparents of little Ronald Reagan Jr. upon his birth in 1958. Taylor, who smoked 3 packs of cigarettes a day for decades, died of lung cancer on June 8, 1969. He was just 59 years old. Here at the Court of Freedom, I thought this was pretty cool. It's a reminder to all Americans of the battles of mind and war which were fought to establish freedom for you and your families. With God's help, can the Americans of today do less? There's nobody here. Well, as a history enthusiast, I really like this mural. Signing of the Declaration of Independence from the painting of John Trumbull in the U.S. Capitol, Washington, D.C. On a prior visit to this cemetery, I highlighted the gravesites of Walt Disney, who was here with his family members. If you'd like, I have included that video in the Forest Glen Memorial Park playlist. I also visited and spoke about Clayton Moore, who played the Lone Ranger, and I also featured Errol Flynn, who's buried here with his wife. So I'll show you once again Errol Flynn's grave right here. And that of his wife, Patrice. She was very young. Boy, that guy was a womanizer and a half. It was kind of eerie being in the cemetery with nobody around due to the Los Angeles fires that were going on. But I was very happy to find out that the Freedom Mausoleum is open. The Columbarium of Victory contains the remains of Dorothy Jean Dandridge, who lived from 1922 to 1965. She was the first African-American film star to be nominated for the Academy Award for Best Actress, and that was for the movie Carmen Jones in 1954. Dandridge had also performed as a vocalist in venues such as the Cotton Club and the Apollo Theater. During her early career, she performed as part of the Wonder Children, later the Dandridge Sisters, and appeared in a succession of films, usually uncredited roles. In 1959, Dandridge was nominated for a Golden Globe Award for Porgy and Bess. The coroner's office concluded that she died of fat embolism resulting from a recent foot fracture. This quarter of the Freedom Mausoleum may be the most loaded with celebrity crypts. Recently, this channel, History Hunters, highlighted the strange kidnapping of Marie McDonald, who was entombed here with her husband, Donald Taylor. I have provided a link to that episode in the video description, so check it out because it's a good one. In a previous video that I did that's found in the Forest Lawn playlist, I talked about George Burns and his wife Gracie Allen. Gracie died in 1965, and he used to come down and sit on the marble bench in front of her crypt until he joined her in 1996. There is a bust of actor Alan Ladd with a poem near his crypt and that of his wife Sue Carole Ladd. The Ladds are encrypted directly above Clara Bow and her husband Rex Bell. So there's the mausoleum, the top of the hill, the Freedom Mausoleum. If you come right down here, you'll find the grave of Joe Besser, one of the Three Stooges, who lived from 1907 to 1988, in loving memory. He brought the world love and laughter. Joe Besser was best known for his brief stint as a member of the Three Stooges in movie short subjects of 1957 through 59. He is also remembered for playing Stinky, the bratty man-child on the Abbott and Costello Show, and Jilson, the maintenance man on the Joey Bishop Show.
All my best games. What are you butting in?
Hey, now you wait out here. I'll go and set this job for you. And behave yourself.
Hold this for me. Don't lick it, just hold it.
When I worked with the Stooges for the first time, see, I was working at Columbia. I was under contract at Columbia Studios. And I took Shemp's place when Shemp passed away. And they asked me if I would go and finish the 2 years that they had for their two-reelers for the comedies. And I did that because I never expected to ever be with the Stooges. But it was one of the most beautiful 2 years that I could remember in show business. We had more fun, more laughter amongst ourselves that made the pictures that we did a happy one.
Found another celebrity grave. Goes back to the silent film era. This woman here was well known, Olive Borden, 1906 to 1947. Olive Mary Borden began her career during the silent film era. She was nicknamed the Joy Girl after playing the lead in the 1927 film of the same title. Borden was known for her jet black hair and her stunning overall beauty. By 1929, her career began to wane due to her rumored reputation for being temperamental and her difficulty transitioning to sound films. She made her last film, Chloe, Love is Calling You, in 1934, but appeared on stage for a time. By the late 1930s, she declared bankruptcy and had stopped acting. Borden died on October 1, 1947, from complications of pneumonia at the age of 40. The only possessions that she had when she died was a signed photo of herself.
I have to say that it's very difficult finding some of these graves because the strong winds that fanned the flames that destroyed a lot of Los Angeles yesterday and the day before it knocked a lot of the debris out of the trees and onto the graves, so it's been kind of difficult. In fact, I was up there and they were chipping away at tree trunks of a tree that fell. This gentleman had to help me find the graves because they're all covered in pine needles after the storm. But finally found the grave of Jane Darwell. Jane Darwell was the mom in the classic film Grapes of Wrath, played the mother of Henry Fonda. She's a very distinguished actress.
How am I going to know about you, Tommy? Why, they could kill you and I'd never know. They could hurt you. How am I going to know?
I'll be all around in the dark. I'll be everywhere. Wherever you can look. Wherever there's a fight so hungry people can eat, I'll be there. I'll be in the way kids laugh when they're hungry and they know supper's ready.
And I can't help but wonder why somebody has scratched her grave marker up. I'm not sure why. Her birth name was Patty Woodard, Jane Darwell, 1879 to 1967.
You may also recognize that Jane Darwell was the actress who played the Birdwoman in the feature film Mary Poppins. By that time, she was well in her mid-80s, retired and feeble. However, Walt Disney offered her the role, but she declined. Disney remained persistent and personally drove to the retirement home to plead with her, and she agreed to take the part. It was her last acting role. It's now time to try my luck inside the Great Mausoleum. Construction on this amazing building began in 1917 and was officially inaugurated in 1920. Additions were made into the 1970s.
And Judas went immediately out. Then Jesus said unto his disciples, Let not your heart be troubled. Ye believe in God, believe also in me. In my Father's house are many mansions. I go to prepare a place for you.
If you establish your own cemetery, you get your own pick of where you want to be entombed. This is the final resting place inside the Great Mausoleum of Hubert Eaton. He envisioned Forest Lawn as a place for the living, with sweeping lawns and noble architecture, stained glass, and a place that uplifted the community rather than being a place of sorrow. He died in 1966. I made my way to the crypts of Hollywood's original power couple, Clark Gable, the King of Hollywood, and wife Carole Lombard. The crypt of Gable, who was a star of the classic Gone with the Wind and other films, is covered with lipstick prints.
Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn.
Gable looked much older than his 59 years of age when he passed away in 1960. Next to him is actress Carole Lombard, who was tragically killed in a January 1942 plane crash outside of Las Vegas. To be honest, I'm a bit mystified that there was anything left of her body following the fire that resulted in the crash, which just left Las Vegas fully loaded with fuel. She was on a tour selling war bonds at the time of the crash. Just down the same alcove are two more celebrity graves that I found. David O. Selznick, who lived from 1902 to 1965, was a famous movie film producer, screenwriter, and film studio executive who produced Gone with the Wind in 1939 and Rebecca in 1940, both which earned him the Academy Award for Best Picture. He was also awarded at the 12th Academy Awards for guiding Gone with the Wind through a long and troubled production and into a record-breaking blockbuster. He died in 1965 at the age of 64. Philip Knight Wrigley, who died in 1977, made a fortune as a chewing gum manufacturer and Major League Baseball executive, inheriting those roles from Father William Wrigley Jr. During World War II, Wrigley founded the All-American Girls Professional Baseball League as a way to maintain interest in baseball since the military draft was depleting major league rosters of their first-line players. The league was immortalized in the 1992 film, A League of Their Own.
You're still missing the cutoff man. Now, that's something that I would like you to work on.
A bust of a man drew my attention to the crypt of Larry Flynt, who was famous as the founder of Hustler magazine and a fierce advocate of free speech and First Amendment rights. He was paralyzed from the waist down after being shot in 1978 by a serial killer named Joseph Paul Franklin. Flynt was originally buried in his family plot in Lakeville, Kentucky, but he was later dug up and entombed here.
When I first started out, I used to buy into a former Supreme Court Justice's argument that you can't scream fire in a crowded theater. Well, I think you can. If somebody gets hurt as a result of that, you can prosecute them for the act. But if you start compromising the First Amendment, you're on a slippery slope.
I stumbled upon the crypt for William Mulholland, the self-taught civil engineer who designed and built the Los Angeles Aqueduct, a 233-mile-long system conveying water from the Owens River to Los Angeles, enabling Los Angeles to grow with a reliable water source. For that, he is called the father of the Los Angeles water system. He was also responsible for the 1928 failure of the St. Francis Dam that killed hundreds of people. One place that I was unable to access was this corridor containing the remains of Walt Disney's parents, Elias and Flora Disney. I could make out Flora's marker from where I was standing, but I didn't want to risk jumping over the gate. The Disneys came to North Hollywood after their son became famous with his cartoon movies. Walt Disney bought them a house, and Flora Cole Disney died when she was overcome by a gas leak from a defective furnace in that house. Her death in 1938 devastated Walt. His surviving father, Elias Disney, died in 1941 and was entombed next to her. My friend Sean shared his pictures of the crypts when he took a special tour years ago. While I personally didn't get to visit the next locations, here's the corridor where James Arness of Gunsmoke fame is entombed. This marker is over the remains of actress Ellen Corby, who played Grandma on the TV series The Waltons. Western matinee idol Hopalong Cassidy's crypt looks like this. He is buried with his wife, Grace Bradley. Silent film star Carole Lloyd, who passed in 1971, is entombed in the secret area of the Great Mausoleum, as is the crypt of Theda Bara, who died in 1955. Known as the Vamp, she died at the age of 59. All good things must come to an end, and this is the end of this episode of History Hunters. On the way out, please let us know what you thought of this video, and please say thanks with a thumbs up. Until next time, this is Jeff looking for more history.
Have I earned your faith? It seems the burden of your wish list has returned, and so I'll wait. Where's my light at the end of the tunnel? Where's my light at the end of the tunnel? Where's my light at the end of the tunnel? The one you promised.